The Kindred Dawn wasn't a warship. She was barely even a freighter, an old, patched-together merchant vessel drifting along the edge of the Varnine expanse. Its hull groaned when it turned, and its captain, Threx, often said with dry humor that she flew not on fuel, but on pure stubbornness. They were midway through a cargo run when the distress signal came in. Weak, flickering, barely a whisper on the subspace bands. Could be a trap, warned Tellen, the security chief. His six-compound eyes narrowed as he scanned the readout. This region's riddled with pirates. Captain Threx, a tall Varnathi with silvery scales and an ever-calm demeanor, didn't reply immediately. He stood at the viewport, staring out at the bleak gray moon the signal came from. Or he said at last, someone's dying down there. A quiet tension settled over the bridge. Set course, Threx ordered. The Kindred Dawn dropped out of transit and cruised low over the cratered surface. Scanners lit up with wreckage, torn metal, scorched rock. A crashed site, clearly old. But within the mangled remains of small dropship, a faint life sign flickered. It wasn't Varnathi, or Yandari, or any of the 33 commonly known species. It was human. The crew exchanged glances. Even in this distant region of space, everyone had heard of Terrans. Apex predators from a death world, unpredictable, emotional, and fiercely protective of their own. The Terran Federation was known for two things: overwhelming firepower and unwavering loyalty. Threx didn't hesitate. Bring them aboard. The human was unconscious, half buried in twisted metal. Her suit was torn, blood soaked into the dirt around her, and her breathing was shallow. It took 2 crew members to carefully extract her, and a third to keep the stabilizer medkit running. She's military, Orin said, eyes wide as he scanned the insignia on her suit. Terran Forces. Special unit. Then we're going to be in trouble, muttered Tellen. In trouble, Threx echoed. For saving a life? You don't understand, Tellen replied. They'll think we took her, or interrogated her, or worse. We didn't, Threx said flatly. And if they're as loyal as the stories say, they'll know. The human was placed in the ship's med bay. Orin, a young medic with more empathy than fear, stayed by her side. She was pale, her dark hair stuck to her face, her hands trembling in her sleep. He adjusted the foreflow and wiped her forehead gently. Strange, he whispered. They look so much like us, but they're so different. Hours passed. The crew remained tense, and the ship drifted quietly above the moon. Then the human stirred. Orin was the first to see her eyes open, brown, sharp, and full of pain. You're safe, he said softly. You're on the Kindred Dawn. We found you crashed. Her hand reached weakly toward him, barely lifting from the bed. Thank you, she whispered. Then her eyes fluttered shut again. Captain Threx stood outside the med bay, arms crossed, listening through the observation panel. A quiet weight settled on his shoulders. Do we contact Earth? Asked Tellen, voice low. Threx shook his head. We wait. Let her recover. And hope this was the right decision. Hope, Tellen muttered, doesn't hold off battle cruisers. I don't believe they'll punish us for compassion, Threx replied. Not if they truly value their own. But deep in his chest, the Varnathi captain felt something shift, as if the stars had noticed their act of mercy and were now watching very, very closely. Unseen by all, deep within the human suit, a dormant signal blinked to life. It pulsed once, then again, a narrow-band encrypted frequency, impossible to detect with conventional sensors. A final failsafe from the Terran Federation. Active biosign detected. Survivor located. Initiating emergency ping. Destination, Earth Naval Command. Priority, absolute. And across the stars, Earth heard. But Earth didn't reply. Not yet. Admiral Arya Voss stood in silence on the command bridge of the TFS Resolute, Earth's 3rd Fleet flagship, her eyes locked on the blinking red alert hovering midair in the holo display. Emergency biosignal received. Code, Nightfall. Location, Varnine Expanse. Moon 5 of System 819 Beta. Subject, Lieutenant Maya Run. Status, alive. The bridge crew held their breath. A nightfall ping wasn't routine. It wasn't even standard military protocol. It was a buried fallback, buried deep in the implants of only the highest-risk field operatives. A final, silent beacon triggered only if their vitals stabilized after presumed death, typically following crash, trauma, or abandonment behind enemy lines. Has she made contact? Boss asked, voice crisp. Negative, replied Lieutenant Sung at Ops. No transmissions, just a ping. Passive. One life form, confirmed Terran genetic code, and non-hostile contacts nearby. Voss nodded once. That was enough. She's alive, she said firmly. And someone helped her. The room waited for the next command. All ships, Voss ordered. Prepare for FTL jump. Destination, 819 Beta. We're moving now. Half a galaxy away, the Kindred Dawn continued drifting above the gray moon. Inside the med bay, Orin adjusted the vitals monitor. The human, Maya Run, they now knew, was improving. Her pulse had stabilized, breathing smooth, and her body no longer trembled. Captain Threx entered quietly, nodding at Orin. She spoke again. Orin said, glancing up, asked if we were safe. I told her yes. Threx folded his arms. Does she remember what happened? She doesn't say much, just stares into the ceiling like she's waiting for something. Threx gave a slow sigh. Maybe she is. Outside the ship, space shimmered, then tore open. The stars bloomed with warships. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. Massive Terran vessels, gleaming with polished armor and radiant blue cores, emerged from hyperspace in flawless formation. Battleships, carriers, cruisers, and at the center, an absolute colossus, the TFS Resolute. On board the Kindred Dawn, warning sirens screamed to life. Captain, Tellen shouted from bridge. We're surrounded. It's the Terran Federation. Entire fleet just dropped out of FTL. Orin froze, looking down at Maya. Her eyes opened slowly, just a sliver. They came, she whispered. A calm hail blared across the Kindred Dawn systems. Unregistered vessel. You are in possession of a Terran asset. Identify yourselves. You have 30 seconds to comply. Captain Threx stepped forward, composed despite the storm outside. This is Captain Threx of the Kindred Dawn, independent trade class vessel. We rescued your Lieutenant Maya Ren from a crash site on this moon. She is currently stable and recovering in our med bay. A pause. Then another voice came through. This one colder, steadier. This is Admiral Arya Voss of the Terran Third Fleet. Prepare for immediate boarding. You have committed no offense. You have our gratitude. Maintain position and do not power weapons. The line cut. Threx slowly turned toward Tellen. That sounded like a promise. Or a warning, Tellen muttered. Shuttles launched from the Resolute, gliding like metallic birds through the silence of space. They docked with the Kindred Dawn's main airlock within minutes. Orin stood waiting in the med bay as the first Terran officers entered, tall, armored, and solemn. The lead officer stepped forward, scanning Maya's biosign, then turned to Orin. You stabilized her? He asked. Ah, yes, Orin stammered. The Terran didn't threaten, didn't interrogate. He saluted. By order of the Terran Federation, you and your captain are under Earth's protection. Your name and act of service have been logged under Protocol 9. Orin blinked. What's Protocol 9? The officer gave a faint smile. Aid rendered to a wounded Terran. Without expectation, without demand. It's rare, and we never forget it. On the bridge, Admiral Voss herself appeared on the main screen. She looked directly at Threx, her expression unreadable. You risked your ship and your crew to help one of ours. That act means more to us than any treaty or trade deal. If not for you, Maya Run would be dead. Threx inclined his head. She is a living being. That was enough. For some, maybe, Voss said, but not for all. Know this, Captain Threx. Your ship, your crew, your world are now known to Earth. And Earth protects its own. She paused, then added, and those who protect them. With that, the channel closed. Far above the moon, the Terran fleet held its position, an unspoken statement to the galaxy. Humanity pays its debts. In full. and without hesitation, the docking clamps released with a hiss as the last Terran shuttle disconnected from the Kindred Dawn. From the viewport, Orin watched it glide silently back toward the towering shape of the TFS Resolute, still hovering above the moon like a metal god. Around it stretched the Terran fleet, a shimmering wall of discipline, precision, and potential destruction. Inside the freighter's common chamber, silence reigned. The crew, Varnathi, Yandari, and 4 others from various species, sat quietly, as if still unsure whether they were honored guests or spare targets. Captain Threx finally broke the silence. "I've seen war fleets before," he said calmly. "I've seen what occupation looks like. This isn't that." Tellan scoffed. "It's not far off. Look at them. Any one of those ships could level a city in seconds." "They're not leveling anything," Threx replied. "They haven't fired a shot. They haven't issued threats. They came for her." He glanced toward the medbay. "For her, and for us." Maya Rin stood unsteadily in the Kindred Dawn's medbay, her uniform freshly cleaned, her wounds mostly healed. She looked older than her age now, as if the weight of survival had hardened into something deeper. Orin stood nearby, awkwardly shifting from one foot to the other. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "You already did." "Not properly." She looked him in the eyes. "You saved me when you didn't have to. You risked your ship, your captain, your people. Terrans don't forget that." Orin hesitated. "I don't need a medal. I just didn't want you to die." "That's why it matters," Maya replied softly. "You didn't do it for reward. That's why Earth sent the fleet." Shortly after, an invitation arrived, though invitation hardly captured the weight of it. A direct summons from Admiral Voss herself, requesting Captain Threx and Orin to board the Resolute for a formal recognition ceremony. The crew exchanged nervous glances, but Threx didn't hesitate. "We'll go," he said simply. "No one turns down the Federation when they come bearing gratitude." The shuttle ride was silent, tense. Orin had never been on a Terran ship before. Nothing had prepared him for the scale of the Resolute. The docking bay alone could house 10 Kindred Dawns, and the interior gleamed with industrial beauty, steel, light, and unmistakable purpose. They were led to a central chamber, where uniformed officers stood in rows, lined like a corridor of stars. At the far end stood Admiral Voss. She stepped forward, flanked by an honor guard, and addressed the gathered crew and officers. "Let the record show that Captain Threx of the Kindred Dawn rendered aid to Lieutenant Maya Run of the Terran Federation, at personal risk and without hesitation." She turned to face Threx and Orin. This act triggered Protocol 9. For all Terran forces and allies, that means one thing: protection, trust, and debt of honor. Earth remembers. She extended a small case to Threx, who opened it to reveal a silver emblem. The Cross of Sol, a Terran symbol of highest civilian honor. "To you, Captain Threx, for your leadership." She turned to Orin and handed him a second emblem, smaller but no less meaningful. "And to you, Medic Orin, for preserving the life of our own. Your name is now known to the Federation." Orin swallowed hard, eyes wide. "I thank you." "You didn't have to help her," Voss said. "But you did. We are not a perfect people. We're feared, sometimes justly, but we value life, our own and those who value it with us." She paused, then added, "You have done more than save a soldier. You've changed the way Earth sees your people." Back aboard the Kindred Dawn, the tone had changed. The crew moved with subtle pride now. Fear had been replaced by something else, something heavier, but warmer. Respect. A final transmission came from the Resolute just before the fleet prepared to jump. "Your vessel and crew are hereby under Earth's goodwill protection. Should you call, we will come. No questions given." Then, as suddenly as they had arrived, the fleet vanished. One by one, their ships blinked into light and left only silence behind. Later, as Orin watched the stars alone from the observation port, Maya joined him. She leaned on the rail beside him and smiled faintly. "You were the only one who looked at me like I was just a person. Not a threat, not a mystery, just someone who needed help." "You were," he replied. Maya looked at him, quiet for a long moment. "If more people were like you, we wouldn't need fleets." and the stars above seemed just a little closer. 3 weeks later, the galaxy still hadn't stopped talking. News of the Terran fleet's sudden appearance in the Varnine expanse had spread faster than FTL relays could carry. Dozens of systems were in quiet uproar. Unaligned species, trade networks, even fringe empires, all now whispered the same question. If Earth sends a fleet to thank someone, what would they send for revenge? No threats were issued. No demands were made. Earth hadn't annexed territory, imposed conditions, or claimed the moon where Maya had crashed. They hadn't even asked for compensation. They had only thanked a small freighter and vanished into the stars. And that silence? It was louder than any war cry. On Varnathi Prime, Captain Threx stepped into the Grand Assembly Hall under heavy ceremonial robes. 100 species were present, and 1,000 more watched through live streams. He walked with Orin beside him, both now known names in diplomatic channels, the ones who helped the human. At the central podium, a Varnathi elder raised her crest and addressed the assembly. The Terran Federation sent no warnings. They issued no ultimatums. They came only to honor a life saved. But let us be clear, that was no simple thank you. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. That was a demonstration, not of power alone, but of principle. Earth did not ask if their soldier was important. They didn't care about context. They responded because one of theirs was helped. She turned toward Threx and Orin. You have changed our relationship with them forever, and perhaps reminded us that power, when bound to loyalty, is a force greater than fear. Thunderous applause followed. Threx didn't smile. He only bowed his head. Back on Earth, Orin stood atop a marble platform in New Geneva Star Hall, a shining city of glass, green towers, and orbiting satellites. Maya Rin stood beside him in formal military uniform, one arm in a sling, but head held high. Orin had never seen a city so clean, so alive. Maya leaned close. You're nervous. He glanced around at the crowd. I'm an alien, standing in Earth's military headquarters, about to speak to your Senate. She smiled. We've had worse guests. Orin stepped forward as the cameras activated. He looked into the sea of human faces and those watching across the stars, and spoke with a quiet steadiness. I didn't save a soldier. I saved a person. That's all. And I would do it again. Maya nodded beside him. And that's why Earth came. In a dim corner of galactic space, far from cameras and awards, another conversation was unfolding, quiet and deeply unsettling. On a shadowed diplomatic station, 2 envoys from rival species sat over a glowing map of Terran fleet paths. Are they preparing for war? One asked. No, the other said grimly. They're preparing for loyalty. The first envoy frowned. Is that worse? The second didn't answer, but he tapped the Varnine expanse with one claw. They sent a fleet for one life. If someone had hurt her instead of helped her, a silence lingered between them. Then, let's never find out. Aboard the Kindred Dawn, months later, Orin stood once more at the observation window. The stars were familiar again, the silence peaceful instead of tense. Maya's voice came from behind him. You've been quiet since the ceremony. He smiled faintly. Just thinking. About what? About how all of this started with a simple choice. She joined him at the viewport. You didn't know who I was. I didn't need to, he replied. She chuckled. You know you're famous now. The galaxy's first honorary Terran. He laughed lightly. They still won't let me wear the armor. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then, we're dangerous. Earth is powerful. But sometimes, people forget that's not the part we're most proud of. What is? She looked at him, eyes steady. That we remember. The people who help us. The ones who stand when others look away. That's what makes us human. The Kindred Dawn resumed its quiet trade routes, but it was never stopped by pirates again. Never taxed unfairly. Never denied docking rights. Because every port, every station, every government remembered one thing. They had helped a wounded human. And Earth had responded, with a fleet and no questions given.